Hello and welcome to another interview special here on the Funk and Soul Revue. In this special, we speak to Walter Scott, one of the lead singers of The Whispers, about their participation in the forthcoming Great Voices of Soul UK tour hitting Birmingham, Manchester and London this November. Well, we're delighted to say now we are joined on the phone here on the Funk and Soul Revue with the true soul legend, Mr. Walter Scott of The Whispers. Mr. Scott, how are you doing today?
I'm just great. How are you?
Very, very well, thank you. All the better for talking to you. Well, the reason that you're here with us here today is that The Whispers, along with Melissa Morgan and Patti LaBelle, will be touring UK this autumn as part of the Great Voices of Soul UK tour. How excited are you about touring the UK again?
Very, very excited. We were there a few years ago, and we'll never forget it. And we're touring with people who in this country are highly respected. They're true rhythm and blues singers, so we're just glad to be a part of that type of talent. So we're super excited, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because the last time you were here was at the Indigo 2, I believe, 2011. I was there. It was a brilliant night. Do you remember much about the concert?
Yes, it was a lot of fun. We were amazed that the fans remembered some of our songs. It was just a great show as far as we were concerned. And we've been trying to get back ever since.
How different is it to perform to a UK audience, you think, compared to an American one?
Well, the European audiences, in my opinion, are much more into what you've done, your credits, who produced your music. I always like that. Here in this country, if it's a hit on the radio and it's been playing for a few weeks, it's going to be big enough. But in Europe, they really know how. They want to know how it originated, and that means a lot to us because anytime you show appreciation for whoever's producing or who wrote a song, that means a great deal to us.
Well, we love you over here in the UK, and we're so delighted that you're going to be coming back to perform. Before we get on to anything else, there was a statement made this week by your bandmate, Nicholas Caldwell, about his recent health problems, and it seems that he's hopefully on the mend now. Can you give us an update?
Yes, he's doing very, very well. Was nip and tuck there for a while. In fact, he just posted some information on the internet, about why he had the surgery, and it's going really, really well. We're super excited. In fact, we hope that not this time, but the next time we come to Europe, if it's maybe a year from now, that Nicholas is with us. So we're very excited about his progress.
That's absolutely brilliant news. Please give him our best. We are thinking of him and hoping that he can join you on stage again in the near future pretty soon.
Absolutely.
Now, the Whispers are unlike most other soul groups in that you've had relatively few personnel changes over the years, and it seems that you've all remained really loyal to one another. Do you think that's been the key to your success and the key to your longevity?
Oh, by far. Yeah, we started many, many years ago, and we knew very early that we were only as strong as our weakest link, so it meant a great deal to us to stick together, and when you're in this industry, you probably know this. You watch a lot of groups come and they self-destruct. We were very fortunate to be raised by some strong mothers that made us understand that by sticking together, you can get a lot done in terms of what you want to do as opposed to separating. So, yeah, we've been together for a lot of years. In fact, 51 years, put it like that.
Did you think when you were starting out that 51 years later you would still be as popular touring around the world?
No. We say this on stage almost. We're celebrating 2014 was our 50th year. We're now in the 51st. And if anyone would have told any of us that we'd be singing 50 years later, we just would have laughed. We'd have said, nah, it just can't happen. But lo and behold, it did. And we're very proud of the fact that we have that kind of longevity.
How did you come to form the Whispers?
Well, we started out in high school, like most groups here in Los Angeles. We met in junior high school, as a matter of fact. And we weren't known as the Whispers. We were known as the Eden Trio, of which I was not a member. I sang with another group that had a female in it. But the Whispers were named. They went to get a record deal here in Los Angeles to a small record company called Dore. And the owner of the company, his name was Lou Burdell, and when the guys auditioned for Mr. Burdell, he described his sound as really soft and whispery. And he said to them, why don't we call you guys the Whispers? And, of course, the Whispers said, well, if you give us a record deal, you can call us whatever you like. And that's where the name came from.
What sort of musical groups were you listening to when you were growing up, and what musical groups were sort of an influence on the Whispers sound and the Whispers in performance as well?
Well, when we came up in the 60s, of course, it was Motown, you know.
Yeah.
But now this is very strange because the Whispers, me and Scotty in particular, we were raised in Nevada, born in Texas, but raised in Nevada, and really didn't get to hear a lot of rhythm and blues until we got to Los Angeles, which by that time we were in junior high school. So when we met the other guys, Scotty and I were influenced by groups like the High-Lows and the Four Freshmen, who sang 4- and 5-part harmony with no bass. And if you remember the 60s, most of the R&B vocal groups, the Temptations, the Dramatics, they all had bass singers. But we didn't have a bass, and it made our sound a little bit different because you didn't hear the bass sound. And that's why when you listened to the Whispers, you knew it was them because there was no bass. And but again, the other guys were influenced by the Temptations, but of course, Scotty and I, we heard the Temptations, but we were more influenced by the High-Lows and the Four Freshmen, which happened to be two white groups that the other guys had never heard of. So it was very interesting when we first got together.
Because the Four Freshmen have those beautiful, beautiful harmonies. Things like
God,
Graduation Day and their Heart Full of Spring.
Absolutely. How old are you? You know about the Four Freshmen?
I'm 22, and I'm also a fan of the Beach Boys. That's how I know.
That's very impressive.
Oh, thank you very much.
You know nothing about the Four Freshmen and the High-Lows. That's out of sight.
You're absolutely right. But no, I much prefer sort of that harmony music and sort of the soul and R&B. It's just the new music, the old music rather, your music and soul and the Motown, especially the Temptations. You just can't beat it.
Oh, God, yeah.
You know, I also read somewhere also, before we move on, that you also looked up and you were very impressed and sort of modelled yourself on the OJays as well.
Oh, absolutely. The OJays were like us in the 60s, paying their dues, you know, on the Chitlin circuit. And what most impressed us about the OJays was their ability to put on a show. Before we met the OJays, we really didn't know how to entertain an audience. You know, back in the day, in the 60s, if stand-up vocal groups were incredibly entertaining. They had routines, they dressed sharp, there was a lot of movement, bands were tight. Well, the Whispers, we used to stand around one mic, stand still. We didn't have a show.
Right.
And we basically made it by singing great harmonies.
Yeah.
Well, once we happened to be on the show with the OJays, and we saw what it was like to put on a great show with routines, and Nicholas Caldwell, the one you just mentioned earlier, he said, from that day to this, we're going to learn how to put on a show. But we were definitely influenced by the OJays because they had an incredible show.
Yeah, I saw the OJays a few months back in London again, and they've still got it. They've still got it.
Absolutely.
So the group, as you said, started in the 60s. You recorded for Janus Records before moving on to Soul Train Records, which I believe became Solar Records.
That's correct. That's right.
And then in 1979, you hit the big time with And the Beat Goes On. Tell us about that song, because that song, over here in the UK, is still one of the most played on radio and in the soul clubs.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, get ready, because we're going to be doing it when we get there. I can't tell you that.
Tell us about
it was incredible because in 1979, as you say, at that time, we had already been singing about 12 years. And so when we went in the studio to do And the Beat Goes On, the album entitled The Whispers, it ultimately had the song for Donnie and Lady and all of that on it. We were really, for the first time, saying, if this doesn't do it, maybe we need to think of something else. You know, our parents were saying, you got to have a full-time job with benefits. You know, your time is wasting away. And that had been, you know, they were putting that in our ear. But we went in the studio to do this album, which had And the Beat Goes On in it. And I say this all the time. When we finished And the Beat Goes On, we were convinced that we had the biggest hit of our life. Because we had been in the business at that time long enough to know that when you do these songs, you kind of know when everything fits. Everything kind of fell in place. Well, that's what happened with And the Beat Goes On. I mean, we did it in 2 or 3 takes. We recorded many takes, but what we ended up using was the first couple because it just stuck. We hit it. And we said to ourselves that if this is not it, then either we really don't know what we're doing or it's time to do something else. And lo and behold, it did become the biggest record that we ever had.
Is it still the biggest record you've ever had?
Absolutely.
Incredible.
In fact, most people think that Rocksteady
Yes.
is the biggest record that we ever had, but it is not. The album that had Rocksteady was a Mill Plus, a Mill 700,000. The Whispers album with And the Beat Goes On was our first legitimate double platinum album. To this day, it's the biggest record that we've ever had.
It's a brilliant album because another song, as you mentioned, was The Beautiful, a song for Donny, of course in tribute to Donny Hathaway, who died earlier on that year. How much of an influence was Donny Hathaway to you?
Incredible. I tell the story, my brother and I, back in those days, we would tour clubs, and the routine was that you would open in a club on either a Thursday or a Friday. You'd be there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And that's how we did it. Well, we were in Chicago. The club that we were to open in the next Thursday, we got to Chicago early. Donny Hathaway we got there on a Sunday. He was closing out, and we were to start that Thursday. And we had heard Donny on record, but had never heard him in person. And I tell people all the time, we will never forget that because this was the greatest soul vocalist to that point that my brother and I had ever heard. Donny Hathaway was at the piano. He really didn't even need a microphone, but his voice just mesmerized all of it. We got to see his entire show, and he was singing songs like We're Still Friends, and I mean songs that people know of him, but we were glued. We had never heard a guy that could sing like that, and we never forgot it, and like most young acts, we tended to try to pair ourselves, sing praises like him, and without a doubt, he's one of our favorite singers, so the impression that he made on us, we never forgot.
Such a tragic end to such a beautiful, beautiful talent.
Oh, man. What a tragic end. Yeah. Too bad.
Yeah. Well, in 1980, the Whispers released Imagination, another superb album, which of course features the hit, another big hit over here in the UK, It's a Love Thing. Tell us about that, because that was one of the first songs that I used to listen to that really got me hooked on the Whispers. Yeah.
That was a production by Leon Silvers, who by that time had really come into his own as a producer, having done And the Beat Goes On. But It's a Love Thing was the group called Dynasty, which was one of the groups at Solar. That was really written by Leon, Nigel, and several people in the group Dynasty. And, we heard it and we all went crazy. The groove was just, right today, we sing it today. It's a groove that never leaves you, And we all were just excited. We said to Leon, man, we didn't think you could come up like this, but you did,
Yeah.
And it's a hell of a song.
And the album also, the title track of the album actually is pretty good as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you think that that song maybe got a little bit overshadowed by the success of It's
It
a Love
always
Thing?
did. Back in those days, back on the tune on the other side of And the Beat Goes On is was it Blame It on the Boogie or? It got people didn't think about it because once you went with the single, that was as far as I'm concerned, record companies did that back then and they shouldn't have. They marketed the single and the B-side was almost unheard of, and as far as I'm concerned, that B-side was just as good.
Yeah. Well, and I also the Whispers. We've talked about their dance classic hits. It's a Love Thing and The Beat Goes On, Rock Steady. But you're also known for your ballads, and one I really like is Say Yes from the Love Is Where You Find It album. Can you tell us about that song?
Love it. That's Nicholas Caldwell at his best.
Yes. He wrote the song.
Lady and Say Yes. Now, Say Yes was never released as a single, but in our opinion, helped drive the sales of the album entirely. It was by far the most popular song on the album. And the reason that we knew that is because when we did it in concert, just like today, you can't do a show and not sing that song. But that was Nicholas Caldwell writing the way he writes, and it was an incredible song and still is to this day.
Yeah, it got a really big reaction when you performed it in London a few years back, and I'm looking forward to hearing it again at London again in November.
Great.
So what was it like working at Solar Records with the other great acts, as you mentioned, Dynasty, but also Shalimar, Lakeside, and Midnight Star, among others? Was there any rivalry?
Later, baby. Yeah, it was an incredible time. It was in the middle of the record label determining, the direction that it wanted to go, because it started out as Soul Train Records, which was an agreement between Don Cornelius and Dick Griffey, and then later on, as you know, it became Solar Records. Don Cornelius wanted out of the record business, so they broke it up, and then we just went straight ahead with Solar, which was the sound of Los Angeles. And it was an incredible time because talent was everywhere. The difference between Dick Griffey and Don Cornelius was that Griffey would let young people who had a talent that could write, he would let them flourish. There was just an atmosphere of creativity everywhere. I mean, Leon, Kevin Spencer, Leon's wife, Nidra, they all were, and then the members of Lakeside from Ohio, the Calloway brothers, all of these people were there, and songs were everywhere. Everybody was writing for everyone. It was an incredible time. And to this day, we talk about Solar Records. It's really the world really does not know how talented this small label was. There was a lot of talent there.
Yeah, when you look back at the 80s and the late 70s, 80s, a lot of great records came from Solar.
Yeah.
And you toured, was it A Galaxy of Stars, the tour? And
yeah,
subsequent
the
follow-up
Galaxy
album.
of Stars tour, yeah.
Yeah, what was it like touring with them? Was there any rivalry, or did you have to up your game to sort of outdo one another, or was it quite a friendly time?
It was a rivalry, but to be honest, it was different. What really helped us get along is that the Whispers was a stand-up vocal group in the image of the Temptations. Lakeside was a self-contained band. Dynasty also was a self-contained band, guys that played the instruments and sang. And then, of course, Shalimar was a trio with the female.
Yeah.
So we were all different, and it made for just an incredible review. Little did we know, Shalimar came, as you probably know, when they got to Europe, they exploded.
They are.
And they were the biggest thing on Solar Records, including the Whispers and everybody else. Shalimar became Solar in Europe.
Yeah, because Shalimar, Howard Hewitt and Jeffrey Daniel, they're on tour at the moment in the UK, and they're playing some really, really big crowds over here at the moment.
Is that right? They're there now, huh?
Yes, they've done. I think they did a tour, I think 2 months ago, and now they're back to do, I think, 4 or 5 dates, and they're
wonderful.
And they're knocking it out of the park. They really are.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Really, really good. Now let's fast forward to 1992 when Marcus Hudson, a founding member of the Whispers, was forced to leave the group because of illness, and you guys took the decision not to replace him. And I'm also, if I'm right, also you helped to pay his medical bills and continue to support him and his family through a difficult time. That's a wonderful thing that the Whispers did.
Yeah, he reached the point to where the cancer got to the point to where he could no longer do it. And you asked about us sticking together earlier. That just stems from we didn't know anything else other to do. As far as he's concerned, as long as he was alive, he was a Whisper.
Yeah.
And that's how we treated it. And man, it was a loss. To this day, we think about Marcus every day. But yeah, that was something that we went through. That was a big part of our career.
And you chose not to replace him in the group.
No.
Would it have just been too difficult to have found a singer to have fitted in that place?
Yeah, we did. We just felt like replacing him, we just kind of wanted to leave it with the four of us.
Yeah.
And you're right, we didn't want to bring another guy in. And, we talked about it. We thought about it for a while, and then we just determined that no.
I think that's what makes the Whispers special.
Thank you.
I really do. I think it's just incredible that the Whispers, the same 4 or 5 guys have been performing together for 50 years without any replacements and still care and love what they're doing. It's just remarkable and unheard of across nearly every genre of music, really.
Yeah, we're very proud of it. To this day, we're extremely close. So, and we know we've been blessed.
Of course. Now, 51 years later, I should say, and you're still performing, and you recently released a gospel album, which is pretty good, by the way. I recommend the listeners to check it out.
Thank you.
Tell us about Thankful, because when I listen to it, it's a gospel album, but I'm also hearing that classic Whisper sound to it as well.
Yeah, we did it, and it was something that we got to do late, because this is something that our parents wanted us to do early on. And you know how record companies are. When they're selling big music, we were having platinum albums at the time, and they didn't really want to attempt to do anything different. But we've always wanted to do, because we all came from the church. Everybody in this group at one time, we were from the gospel church. So when we finally, years later, a small company in Chicago gave us an opportunity to do a gospel album, we jumped at it. And, went through what it takes, met with a few producers, and finished it. We called it Thankful, and because that's how we felt. We felt thankful to be able to do a gospel album. And but we didn't do it for it. We didn't want it to compete with what we're doing. We just wanted to have on our resume the fact that we could do a gospel album.
Yeah.
And that's how it turned out, and we're very proud of it.
It's a really good album. Recommend people go and check out that. And in 2006 as well, you released a brilliant album as well, which featured, if I'm right in saying, and I think you performed it last time in London, a song called Butter, which I believe is written by Tina Marie. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah,
how did that collaboration come about?
Well, we happened to be managed, before Tina died, we were managed by the same management company. And but we toured with Tina quite a bit, as a matter of fact. In this country, we did several dates with her, and very close. And so she had always told us that she wanted to write something for us. And man, when she brought us Butter, we just melted like butter. That's the only way I could put it. Because being in the studio with this young lady, I'm sure if you're into R&B, you know all about Tina Marie. This was the most, without a doubt, talented young lady that we'd ever been around. We admired her, she admired us, and we had a ball. She played the song Butter for us, and we just melted. We said, "Oh man, we can't wait to get in the studio."
Yeah.
But we had a little mix up, because Nicholas heard the song. He said, "Tina, I know you did this, but would you give me the opportunity? If you don't like it, you can take it off. Let me put the backgrounds on. If you don't like them, you can take them off. But just would you give me the opportunity to do it?" And she said yes. And man, the rest is history. It all worked out perfectly.
It's a superb song, and of course, as you say, Tina Marie was just...
Oh, what a talent.
I had tickets to see her just before she died, and didn't get to see her, and it's one of the sort of big regrets and big sort of things. I never got to see her live in concert.
Oh man, you missed it. She was one of the greatest.
She was indeed. Well, finally, Mr. Scott, thank you so much for speaking with us today. For someone who's never seen the Whispers live in concert, what can they expect when they come out this autumn to see you guys on the Great Voices of Soul tour?
Well, you're going to be surprised, because you're going to think, we've been around for 50 years, but I'm telling you now, we're coming to bring it. A lot of energy. We sing rhythm and blues. We don't back away from it. It's going to be a hard driving show, and we're super. I just hope we don't overdo it, because we're very excited to be working with all of these artists. But look forward to a great show, because we intend to make you like us enough so you can say we got to have them back next year.
Well, I can certainly say that, from speaking from experience, that is definitely true. Thank you so much. Walter Scott of The Whispers, thank you so much for joining us here on the Funk Soul Revue. It's truly been an honour to speak with you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
That was Walter Scott of The Whispers. Thank you very much to him for joining us today on the Funk and Soul Revue. It has been truly an honour to speak with him. And you can see The Whispers along with Melissa Morgan and Patti LaBelle on tour in London, Manchester and Birmingham this November. Full details can be found on thefunkandsoulrevue.com. And for more interviews like this, head over onto thefunkandsoulrevue.com. I've been George Haffenden. Thank you very much for listening.
Hello, I'm Candy Staten, and you're listening to the Funk and Soul Revue with George Haffenden.